Good evening, everyone. I'm Barry Fogel. I'm one of the elders here at the Manchester Church of Christ. And if you're online with us, I'm glad that you took the time out of your busy day to be with us. This evening, we're going to start our series, and we have with us as our speaker for the weekend, Mr. Charlie Jackson. His wife, Diana, is here with us as well. Charlie and I have known each other for about 35 years, as we recall, and first met Charlie back working at Manatani, which is a Christian camp in Pennsylvania. So we were doing counseling there and various other things that we've done. But I've known Charlie and Diana for a long time, and so I'm really happy that they could be with us here today. Little background, they've been married for 41 years. They have two children, Joshua and Angie. Charlie has been many things in his career. He's been a police officer. He's been an investigator, and then decided to about 25 years ago or something like that, decided to get into counseling at a professional level. So he went to Harding and completed their master's degree there in family and marriage therapy. So he's also worked many years under the supervision of PhDs and has gotten all the certification stuff that he needs, and he's been practicing for about 21 years now. So this evening we're going to talk about parenting. The talk is titled Parenting is Hard. I think anyone who's been associated with parenting would certainly agree with that. And as it goes from infancy to when they launch out on their own, it all brings its unique challenges with each phase of their young lives. And our job is to raise them to become functioning adults in society, and that's not always easy. So Charlie is going to share with us what he's learned through the years working with parents, working with adults, and working with marriages, because they all have to work together to be successful. So he has the skill set for that and the experience. He's going to share that with us, and I'll turn it over to Charlie and let the professional take over. Charlie?
Yes, there we go. Good evening. I have some cards here we'll pass out in a few minutes. If you have questions, Sunday evening at 6, we're going to have a time just of going over the anonymous cards and asking, and dealing with. I guess I should say up front, you know what an expert is, right? And there's a couple of definitions, or several. One of them is that you're more than 100 miles from home, and I am that. I live in northeast Arkansas. And the other one is a drip under pressure, and I prefer not to think of that one, but sometimes that may be more accurate, just to drip under pressure. I want to put not a caveat, but at least an explanation. I'm not going to presume that we can, in 6 hours, teach someone how to be a wonderful parent and raise a kid with no problems. It would be nice. I've been studying parenting now for 39 years. That's how old my daughter is. And I'm still studying parenting, and probably will be until she or I die. But I do have some things that we'll talk about that will help. Parenting is a journey, obviously. There are some things, though, that if you know the map, the journey is a lot easier. If you got a place where you can go. If you know how to get your oil changed once in a while, that helps. Get the tires checked and aired up, that helps. And so that's the kind of thing I'm going to be talking about today and for the next couple of days as we meet Saturday and Sunday. Just matters of housekeeping. There are restrooms downstairs. The longest session will be Saturday, and those are 2 hours apiece. But if you need to go, you don't have to raise your hand and ask permission. Just take care of yourself. Tonight is scheduled to go about an hour, maybe an hour 15, depends on how fast I talk. That's the housekeeping stuff. I mentioned a moment ago that the title for tonight is Parenting is Tough. what do you get? What happens if you have perfect parents and perfect kids in a perfect environment? I mean, that should be working out great, right? Perfect parent, perfect kids, and perfect environment. Genesis chapter 3 says the kids mess up. And I don't think it gets any better than God himself as your father. Doesn't get any better than the Garden of Eden was described. All he said was, don't eat that fruit. And they said, what fruit? Because that's what kids do. And then they started looking at it, and anyway, you know what happened with the rest of that. So that's not to let you off the hook. That's to give you some measure of comfort, though, because God doesn't expect us to be perfect parents. But that being said, how then can I raise my children so that they like themselves, they can think for themselves, and they know that there's no problem so big it can't be solved? Because if I can raise an adult, I say I, understand that I is plural in this case, okay? Me and God, me and Diana, me and Barry in some cases, because if I can raise my children to be an adult who can function in this society, who likes themselves, they're not going to go get drunk. They're not going to hang around people who get drunk. They're not going to do things that are stupid and going to hurt themselves. Here, why don't you jump off this cliff? No, I like myself. How many of you have said, when mothers have said to you when you were growing up, oh, everybody's doing it, so if they all go jump off a cliff, are you going to as well? No, because I like myself. I can think for myself. Very often we as parents say, I want you to learn to think for yourself. Put your shoes on. I want you to learn to think for yourself. You can't wear that shirt to church. I want you to learn to think for yourself. Put your coat on. It's cold outside. As Joshua was growing up, we lived in Pennsylvania. Our winter's cold up here. Yeah, that's what I thought. They are in Pennsylvania too. And Diana, loving mother that she is, we'd go outside and she'd say, Josh, and I'd say, stop. I know what she's going to say. Go get your coat. It's cold outside. Joshua being I doubt he's watching, so I'll say it. Strong-willed child, okay, would not go get his coat just to show us that he didn't have to go get his coat. He can think for himself. As an adult, in fact, 2 Christmases ago, we were meeting as a family. We were talking about this very thing, and Joshua said, Dad, do you have any idea? I nearly froze to death, proving to you that I didn't. Son, that's your choice. You know, I'm okay with that. You can choose poorly. I don't like it, but you can. By the way, I guess I do need to say I will use a lot of stories from my own personal my therapy practice. Obviously, I have to clean up names and stuff. I can't put out enough information that you can identify somebody. But I am going to use Joshua and Angie. That's my children, and that's just tough. That's why they don't come to my seminars, because sometimes they were tough to teach, but that's just what I know, so you're going to get to put up with my stories, I guess. So, that being said, parenting is tough. So with that in mind, I would like to suggest that we make sure that we do things. Do we have a parenting is tough? Diane and I are still learning how to do this together. Okay. Is that what she said? Okay, keep talking. Parenting is a challenge. So one of the things that we need to do then is make sure that we take care of ourselves. How often as parents have we found that we are yelling more than we want to? Maybe snapping, spanking our children when we don't want to, spanking our children more or harder than we want to or need to. How often do we find that we are saying the very things that our mother said to us that we swore we'd never say because they were so demeaning and put us down when we were small? And yet, here we go. So we need to make sure we take care of ourselves. And how do you recognize that? In fact, you help me here, okay? How do I recognize, how can I recognize that I'm maybe stressed out and need to take a break? Other than the ones I've just listed, I guess. That's a bad question to ask, evidently. So just be aware that we need to. Now then, I want to offer you something, though. Yes, sir. Busted? Okay, so Danny says when his wife says to him, honey, we need to talk, he knows he's gone too far. Probably she says that just after an event he'd rather not talk about. I know this from experience because Diana has much the same thing. Charlie, your children weren't born grown, and she thinks seems to think I was. But anyway, so we need to be aware that we need to take care of ourselves. Okay. In 1954 in Milan, Italy, there was a group of therapists who were so good at what they did. People came from all over Europe. Okay, that's good. Leave it there. That people came from all over Europe to see how they could help. It didn't matter what the presenting problem was. It could be the father being addicted to alcohol. It could be the mother addicted to gambling. It could have been an affair in the family, the children misbehaving, poor grades in school. It did not matter what the presenting problem was. What the Milan group, one of the things that they recommended everybody do, they called it the invariant prescription. They wanted the husband and wife to get in an appropriate relationship. They wanted to do something that would put the family back in an appropriate order. I use a daisy to demonstrate this. Is there okay, we'll use it. Is it going to grow automatically or do you have to push buttons? Okay. I maintain that the most important relationship in the home, okay, is between yourself and your God. That is the single most important relationship in the home. That will determine how you behave in all of the other relationships. The second most important relationship in the home is the husband and wife. Observe that I do not say the mother and the father. Wow, no, because God didn't put mother and father here first. He put husband and wife here first, and he said, get it right and fill up the garden. And if the husband and wife don't have their act together, I guarantee it'll show up. It'll show up in the children. So I maintain that the most important relationship in the home is the husband and wife. Children are important. I'm not saying that they're not important at all, but they do not come between the husband and wife. In 21 years of therapy, I've worked with lots of families, and if mother and father are not getting, or husband and wife are not getting along, they'll pick a favorite. Dad will pick a favorite child, mom will pick a favorite, and those two children come between then the husband and wife. It doesn't work. What? Oh, I'll get there. It doesn't work. I didn't mean about that. I meant the relationship doesn't work. Okay. Grandparents. I love grandparents. They're great. They're a great influence in the family. They have a lot of things to teach these parents. But if they try to come between the children and the parents, that's inappropriate. It doesn't work because the husband and wife is up here, the children are out here, part of the daisy, and the grandparents are down here. All of it, when it works well, it works well. That's plan A. Okay, what happens when you have a mother and the father's gone, divorce, death, disease, for whatever reason? Now what? Go back to point A. The most important relationship in the home is not then the mother and the children. The most important relationship in the home is the mother and her God. And when she gets that right, the other things take care of themselves. Or rather, they take care of themselves because she's doing it right. So, me and God, that's most important. Second, me and my wife. In fact, I believe that so much that even as we were raising our children, I didn't let Josh and Angie sit between us at church because I wanted them to know, even on a metaphorical level, you do not come between me and my wife. When we would sit at the dinner table, Diana and I sit at a corner, and the children sit at the table. It's just, I believe that we teach with everything that we do. Behavior has meaning, and so we wouldn't let them sit between us. They knew that it didn't do any good to come and say, Daddy, can I go outside? And Mom had said no. Not because I said, what did your mom say? I can say for myself, thank you very much. But because Mom and I had already discussed whether they should go outside or not, and we knew that that wasn't going to happen. Okay? Kids, by the way, are opportunists. I don't mean that in a bad way. Kids I was going to say primary function, but that's not fair to the kids. Kids are built to find the boundaries, okay? That's what they do. They test and try to find. It's called the playground study. It was done many years ago. They had a bunch of children. They played all over the playground at recess at school. They had a good time. They enjoyed each other. They chased the ball. There were fences around the playground, and the children felt safe from the cars and the traffic on the street. Somebody got the wild idea that children are hemmed in by fences, and that's inappropriate. You can't hem children in. So they took the fences down, and the children played right in the middle, right where the teacher was standing. They wouldn't occupy the whole playground. So I believe, and God teaches, children need boundaries. And it's not just chain link fences. It's knowing that husband and wife have got their act together well enough that we both know what the boundaries are and are going to be consistent. So let's see here. I've already talked about the daisy at large. Man, now okay, there we go. With God at the center of the relationship, the couple's parents in appropriate support roles. They would be down here outside somewhere. Go ahead, let's see what's next. They raise emotionally healthy children who mature and then repeat the healthy cycle. I sit in my office 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year, and listen to women who say, this is the 5th man I've married, he's abusive, I've got children by these 6 guys, and they describe to me these, they don't have a daisy. Now, sadly, I work for a secular organization, and I cannot say, if you could find a way to get your family all together in one faith and stand together and grow together, like I would say in my private practice, then we could do that. But I have to try and find a way to help these women who have never really matured themselves, who don't know how to raise children because they weren't taught to raise children, that their family history looks like the one that they're living now. It makes it very difficult to raise children. Can you imagine standing in a stream, waist deep, on slippery rocks? Yeah, that's what life is like when you don't have some place. I use the term all the time. You need a place to put your feet. That's what I believe Christianity does. Everybody says, "Boy, I wished I had a plan. I wished I had an instruction manual. I wish I had an instruction manual for raising children." We have one. Now, I don't deny what the lessons are spread throughout the book, but we've got an instruction manual, and it works. If you put your family in the appropriate relationship with God, and then you put the parents in appropriate relationship with God, then the children in an appropriate relationship with their parents and God, it works. Does it work 100% every time? No, because God gives us and our children free will. There's a phrase in Proverbs chapter 22. Raise up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And we put a lot of faith in that, right? If I raise up my child in the church, coming to church Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday and twice on Wednesday, or whatever it is that we're doing, and I'm standing up here and it's impossible to think and stand. So if I do that and I send them to summer camp and I read to them in the Bible every night, they're going to turn out okay because that's the way they should go. But brothers and sisters, that's not what the verse says. That's what King James said. They inserted a word, should. Raise up the child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I'm not a Hebrew scholar, don't pretend to be. But the original Hebrew reads, raise up a child according to his way, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I live in a gravel pit, basically. Fruit trees won't grow in a gravel pit. I have tried for several years. Recently, I have gotten 55-gallon drums. I whacked them in half, I filled them with dirt, and I put fruit trees in there. Now, I've got in mind how I want these fig trees to grow. That's what they are, fig trees. I want to put posts on either side with a crossbar across the top, and then train these fig trees to grow out that way. And then I can prune them every year, and they will stay within the confines of my bucket. Those fig trees are not cooperating. One of them, particularly, sitting right beside my porch right now as we speak, has got 4 different sprouts coming up. It's not going to work. Now, I confess, I can take the prunes to it and I can cut it back and make it match what I have pictured in my head for that fig tree to do. And it might live. It might live. Or I can say, okay, you're going to be a fig bush, and train it to be a fig bush. And the other one that actually has 2 leaders that are appropriate, I can train it the way I want. And I'm going to be satisfied with both. And that's what it means, raise up a child according to his way, to recognize that every child is different. What does she put up here? Okay, every child is different. And that it's my job as a parent then to find that child's way and to nurture it, to prune it. That's what discipline is. God prunes you and I. To prune it and to teach it according to his way. One of the ways that a model, by the way, I'm going to use a lot of models, ways of looking at things. There are many ways to look at something. We'll have one Saturday that's even a model for how people get angry. It's a model. It's one way out of many to look at things, but it helps us to remember stuff. Gary Chapman wrote a book called The 5 Love Languages, and he maintains that people have 5 ways of saying, I love you. One is to spend time together. One is physical touch. One is gifts, doing things, giving things to each other. Time, touch, talk is just, some people just really enjoy talking, and that's the way they feel loved. And then the other is acts of service, doing things for one another. Diane and I had been married for several years, and I said, this isn't working. I don't feel loved. I wasn't a therapist, but I was a desperate husband. And I said, I don't feel loved here. This isn't working. And I should have written Gary Chapman's book before he did, but I didn't. And she said, well, why don't you feel loved? I have borne you children. I take care of your house. In fact, I sewed you that shirt. She knitted me a sweater one time. Have you ever seen The Michelin Man? Now, she's sitting here, so I'm going to be very careful. She knitted me a sweater out of heavyweight yarn. It was a turtleneck. And it never got cold enough in Pennsylvania to wear that turtleneck. It was a warmth generator. It would come up like a sea collar. And when you put it on, you couldn't bend your elbows. And so I had this sweater. I know she loved me. She knitted me a sweater. And she said, so I do all this stuff for you. How can you not feel like you're loved? And I said, well, you don't hold hands with me. When I kiss you, you guys know what I'm talking about. That's where the term kiss off came from. I'm going to push you away with my lips. Okay? I said, you don't kiss me. You just don't, I don't think you love me. And so we obviously, see, Diana is a very acts of service person. She does things for you. She's doing this for me right now, in fact. She's sitting back there holding the button because that's how Diana says, I love you. It's also how she makes sure I finish at 8 o'clock. Okay? But she's an acts of service person. I'm a touch. We had to teach one another this. So now when I'm sitting at the kitchen table, reading the newspaper or whatever I'm doing, when she walks by, she tousles my hair. It's not a big deal. It gives me goosebumps all over. Okay? That's how she says, I love you, because she knows I need touch. Children are no different. You can have 5 children, and I can almost guarantee you'll have all 5 different ways here demonstrated. Our job as parents is to figure it out, and then to do what that child needs. And see, it takes, when we're raising children, when we're building a relationship, any relationship, it takes 5 positive affirmations a day. 5 a day to maintain a relationship. It takes 7 to grow. So I make sure that since Diana's is acts of service, I put a load of laundry in. That's 1. Okay? I put gas in her car. That's 2. Sometimes it's hard to get 5 of them in a day. Actually, she's got it pretty easy. All she's got to do is rub my head. But it takes 5 positive affirmations a day to grow, to maintain a relationship. It takes 7 to grow. Our job as parents is to figure out what our children's way of saying I love you. If you give your child a cookie That may say all kinds of things. That might be positive. To a child who's got a bad self-image, cookie means, oh, you're wanting to make me fat now. So figure out your child. What do you have next? No, just show me what you have next. Okay, never mind. Do we have the handouts here that we copied? Okay. This would be a good time to pass them out, sir. We're going to take a little quiz. Yeah, he's been sitting too long. 61 years old will do that to you. Pardon? Yes. You didn't know there'd be a test. This is not for me, by the way. You're not going to turn it in. I don't get copies of it. It's just for you, okay? I need one, actually. Danny? Thank you, sir. One more right here. This gentleman gave me his. There we go. This is a short quiz. Now, understand that you're not going to get an in-depth psychological survey in 10 questions. Doesn't happen, okay? But for instance, if your child is throwing a major tantrum at the grocery store because she wants a free cookie being offered from the bakery, you said no, it's before dinner. That's reasonable, correct? Anyway, everyone is staring at you and the bakery clerk is smiling and holding out the cookie. Do you let her have the cookie? Do you take her by the hand and quickly walk away from the bakery while explaining, honey, I know you would like a cookie. I know it's hard to say no when someone is offering you a treat, but it's almost dinner time and a cookie will spoil your appetite. You can have a cookie at home after dinner. Please stop crying. C, take her by the hand or pick her up and go to a quiet corner or out to the car where you sit until she is calm and ready to re-enter the store. D, yell at her. I will not have this young lady. Bad girl. Give her a smack on the bottom. Say, stop this behavior right now, young lady. We're going to drop that to just one question on a survey. You can take this home with you and look at them more if you wish. But you can tell here that there are 4 different ways of parenting a child, just from those 4 responses. Now, I'm assuming that not everybody in here is going to jump up and say, well, you just give her a little smack. Though, if the audience were larger, there'd probably be someone who would think, well, yeah. But that's not the only response. There's all kinds of responses. And we're just going to skip ahead and look at Baumrind. And she breaks out, and you can take this quiz home and mess with it yourself, okay? We're just going to look at that first one in those 4 responses. She says that there are 4 parenting styles. And in these 4 styles, it's really a question of how much support and how much control do you offer a child. It's possible to have a household where you have very low support and lots of control, and Baumrind would say that's authoritarian. This parenting style works very, very well. It does, until the kid hits 14. Because then they're going to rebel. And because they've had somebody telling them precisely and exactly, with no variation and no input, and just you do it this way, they're going to look for someone else to tell them what to do. And I can virtually guarantee you that they will find somebody to tell them what to do that you won't like. The authoritarian parenting style is not very effective. Like I said, it'll work for a while. But I talked to parents who they found out very early that if they yell at a child, the child will respond. And they never change. What we're going to do as we go through these next 2 days is look at a progression as a way to raise children. I'll get back to this in just a moment, so don't move it. A progression. When children are very young, we tell them things, okay? It's appropriate. They're born with nothing in their brain. They have to learn it somehow. Don't touch the stove. That makes sense, doesn't it? How many parents, though, say, don't touch the stove? I said, don't touch the stove. Don't touch that stove. Get away from that stove. That stove's dangerous. That stove will burn you. And then they make sure that the child never touches the stove. The children don't learn that the stove's hot. They learn compliance. So What if you said, don't touch the stove, and then back up? Joshua, he's in Kuwait. He's not watching this, right? We didn't tell him this was when we streamed live. Okay. When my children were small, I like to read. I have a wall full of books. And we wanted our children to read, so we made sure and got them books. And we put a shelf down there for Joshua and Angie. And I can remember one afternoon I was telling Joshua, these books are mine. He was about 2 years old. He speaks English, or spoke English then. These books are yours. You can color in them. You can tear a page. They're your books. You can read them. I prefer that, but they're your books. Do not touch these. Now, it's not because there's anything up there, okay? I could die today, and I'm not ashamed of what my children will find on my bookshelf. There's not that I didn't care what he learned out of my bookshelf, but I know what a 2-year-old's going to do to my books. Joshua, Lord love a strong-willed child, he went, he didn't touch the bookshelf. He was close because he was checking. So I told him, and then there was a consequence for tempting Dad. He got his leg swatted. This is a good place to stop and talk about swatting and spanking and discipline and that kind of thing. I will tell you up front that I do believe in spanking. I have found that God spanks me sometimes, pretty firmly, okay? But God doesn't spank Charlie when he's mad at me, because then it's not discipline, then it's punishment, okay? I believe that if we're going to spank children, it needs to be within parameters. One, you should never be angry, ever. If you're angry and you spank a child, you are abusing a child. You're also teaching the child, when you're older and you're angry, it's okay to hit. And that's not an appropriate lesson, ever. So we taught in our house, there are certain things that you do. It's your choice whether you do them or not, but there are certain things that will always result in a spanking. I'll use an easy example, lying. Barry mentioned a moment ago that I was a police officer. I was trained in interviews and interrogations. I liked doing it. And then I became a family therapist. I like doing that too, and it's funny how close those are, those professions. Diana says my children didn't have a chance. Joshua, I remember, came out of the shower one afternoon or one evening, and he had 2 very thin cuts up here on his upper lip, very close together. Okay, now it doesn't take a rocket scientist. My 10-year-old son decided he wanted to shave his cheeks. I don't blame him. That's what 10-year-old boys do. And not knowing how to use a razor, he cut his upper lip. I said, Joshua, looks like you got a cut on your upper lip. Actually, I was going to give him a hard time about it because I know what he was trying to do. He said, Dad, I was taking a shower, I was shampooing my hair, and I looked up and the razor fell off the shelf, and because I used to shave in the shower, and it fell off the shelf and it hit me right there, and it cut my... I said, son, I love you very much. I'm not angry. What happens when you lie? I get 2 licks. Okay, now then we're going to start over, and you get an opportunity to try and tell me the truth. He said, Dad, I was trying to shave, and I just wasn't, I said, okay, good. Now let's go, and I'll show you how to shave. But in my house, if you lie, all activity stops. We go get 2 licks. Not we. I administer, they receive. And then we come back and start over. It's worked very well. I believe in spanking, but not when you're angry. And everybody needs to know the rules up front. When we talk about discipline tomorrow, we'll cover that some more. I just wanted you to know about spanking. So when Joshua did this, there was going to be a consequence. Parenting style, interventions. Talked about the daisy, invariant. Okay, authoritarian parenting style. The children will be rebellious because that's all they've minded because they didn't have any choice. They also were not taught how to think because you did all the thinking for them. And that's not going to work either once they get 15 years old. The neglectful, low control, low support, I really don't care what you do. Those children don't care what they do either. They will tend to, again, there's nothing set in stone here, but they will tend to find the lowest common denominator. What group will accept me? Because they want to fit in with somebody, they want to feel like there's some limits somewhere, and every group has limits. I don't believe in peer pressure because we choose the peer group. In Texas, when I was growing up, there were the goat ropers. Y'all know what goat ropers are? It's about like what it sounds like. They wear cowboy boots, they wear cowboy hats, or usually there's something green on their boot because they've been going to FAA meetings and they've taken care of the cows. They're goat ropers. Goat ropers in Texas drink beer. Okay? Wouldn't occur to a goat roper to smoke pot. However, when I was in school, there were the potheads. They didn't like beer. Ew, give me a joint. And then there were and they experimented with all kinds of stuff. Those groups will set the limits. We don't want those groups to set the limits. We want our children to think, I like myself, I can think for myself, and there's no problem so big it can't be solved. And the parent that has no support and no control, the children don't know where the fences are, and they don't get any support at all, and they don't learn those 3 lessons. So they'll find a group where they'll fit in, and that will accept them. Then there are those parents that say, do whatever you want. They got lots of, low control and high support. You're smart enough to figure out you're smart enough to figure out what you want to do. I haven't met a child yet who can save the world. Okay? When Josh and Angie were growing up, I got to observing, we watch sitcoms on TV. We watch TV with the children. Everybody does that at home, right? But if you notice, especially from the 80s when my kids were kids, every sitcom on television had a doofus as a dad. Okay? Mom was a tart, and the kids were the heroes. The kids were the smart ones. Now, I'm sure that if after we get through, you can come up here and tell me there was one that otherwise, I'm glad for you. But what Diana did, we talked about it and said, okay, we're not inviting those families into our home. I don't want them to be examples to my kids because your dad's not stupid and your mother's not a tart. And you're not going to act like she is. Harry Potter. Have we got Harry? And don't tell me. If you're a Harry Potter fan, Lord love you, I'm glad for you. But do you realize in even the Harry Potter movies, the kids are the smart ones. They do not trust the adults, and they don't share, and they don't help. They don't ask for help, and the kids save the day. Even Harry Potter. Bernstein Bears. How benign does it get? Bernstein Bears. Dad's a doofus. Mom, she's not a tart. She's a support. Lots of support. No control. Excuse me. And the kids are the smart ones that save the day. So we decided no Saturday cartoons. Well, we let Angie and Josh watch the Smurfs. That's pretty benign. Until Angie started casting spells on Joshua. Bernstein Bears go out. I don't know about you, but I'm willing to sacrifice television to raise my kids. I think they're that important. My television is not going to be with me in my old age. Well, it probably will, but it's not going to be like my kids will. So we just cut out television. We had a television. It was in a cabinet, and the door stayed closed 5 days, 6 days out of the week. Friday night and Saturday, we could open the doors and watch a movie that Diana and I picked. If the kids wanted to pick a movie, they could pick one as long as it passed muster. Joshua, as he became a teenager, started listening to music that, quite frankly, I didn't understand. I'm hard of hearing, and I literally didn't understand it. And I said, I tell you what, you can listen to anything you want. You got free will. Bring the lyrics to the dinner table and read them out loud. And if it passes muster, you can listen to it. It seems like I'm giving him the choice, but there's also, this is my home. And brothers and sisters, this is not your children's home. You are the parent. They are living there. Does that mean you can get rid of them? No, that's not what I mean. But I told Joshua and Angie both, that's my bedroom you're living in. And if I choose to come in and search it, I do because this is my house. I never had to, but it's my house. And I don't need permission in my house. I would like for you to think as parents, you don't need permission. Your job is to raise your kids. And I'm encouraging you to raise your kids with a purpose. We're not trying to raise kids, by the way. I'll say that over and over again. And I'll probably say several more times. We're not trying to raise children. We're trying to raise adults who happen to be children right now. With that in mind, then, I need to see that I give lots and lots of support. I love you. You're special. You're my son. You're my daughter. Perfect. Flaws and all. If I could write a list of what I wanted in my children, that's it. You're it. Lots of support. But lots of control, too. Because children aren't born with the knowledge of how to control themselves. It's our job to teach them. Okay. I've got some notes here. The authoritarian parent often raises rebellious children. The permissive, neglectful parent, kids tend to seek the lowest common denominator, anybody who accepts me. I deserve it. Entitlement thinking, that's the permissive. And then the balance with structure and support, the children grow up thinking, I like myself, I can think for myself, and there's no problem so big it can't be solved. That cuts out alcoholism, that cuts out drug addiction, that cuts out suicide, that cuts out poor peers. I like myself, I can think for myself. There's no problem so big it can't be solved. There's that. Let's go back to then, because I skipped it when I was there. I know, I see that, but I skipped the Milan group and what they recommended, their invariant prescription. Sorry about that. I mentioned the Milan group a moment ago when I was talking about parental support and taking care of the caregiver. This is what they recommended for every family that came to see them, regardless of the presenting problem. They wanted mom and dad to leave the house one evening a week, come back before bedtime. Don't tell the kids where you're going. Don't tell them where you've been. Don't tell them when you leave. Just not be there. Gone. Now, does that mean leave the children without supervision? No. Arrange a babysitter. But it's none of the children's business where husband and wife went tonight. That's the point. It takes the children a while to get used to that. They want them to do that one night a week for a month. So for 4 weeks, parents leave the house one evening a week, get back before bedtime. The second month, parents leave the house, be gone one evening a week, get back after bedtime. Make sure the children are supervised, make sure they stay safe. The third month, they want the parents to choose a weekend and be gone. Arrange for care. I mean, we don't want to leave toddlers in the lurch, right? But parents be gone for the weekend. And then the fifth month, I think we're up to 5 months, the fifth month, the parents were to leave for a week. This worked on so many levels and worked so effectively that they ended up recommending it to everybody who came to their office. Because it puts the children in a new relationship. They're not telling the parents. Right now in Arkansas, there's an advertisement for visiting Arkansas State Parks. And the children, it's on the radio, they're sitting around the table, you can hear what's going on. And dad says something about, I'm stuck, kind of like this ketchup that won't come out of the bottle. And they talk about, well, we can go spend more time outdoors, and it's all a wonderful commercial. At the very end of it, this little girl's voice says, here, Dad, let me help with that ketchup. I don't know about you, but that crawls all over me. I don't need a 10-year-old to rescue me from a ketchup bottle. Children are not adults. Children are children. They are going to be adults, and I need to make sure that I offer lots of support and lots of control in an appropriate, age-appropriate way, because I won't treat a 15-year-old like I do a 2-year-old, and we'll talk more about that progression later. But I want the children to know that they are the children. That gives them the boundaries and the fences so that the parents can be parents, the kids can be children, and they can all learn and hopefully have a peaceful life. It's possible, okay? And it's our job as parents to figure out how we're going to step into those roles. If it's all authoritative, it's not going to work. Parenting style, Writing quiz. Yes, sir. No, the Milan group, yes, sir. It showed the children that they were not in control of the household. It also, in the case of the husband and wife, if their relationship was not very good, they started dating again. And that improved their relationship. It also got the husband and wife into a role where they could be appropriate parents and realize, for instance, my children are going to grow up and be gone someday, and here I am going to be with this other human being, and I need to know who they are. So it helped restructure the family in a way that was very healthy. That's what it did. The very first, when I was still in school learning to be a therapist, the professors would assign us, they had a community counseling center, and the professors would assign us clients. And one of my first clients, I was 37, was a couple, and they were in their early to mid-60s. They had not touched one another in 20 years. I mean, nothing hadn't touched in 20 years. They occupied the same house. They had dinner at the same table. But in the morning when they woke up, he would get out and go to his shop. They were retired. And for lunch, he would go to McDonald's and have lunch with the guys. And for the rest of the afternoon, he would spend out in the yard somewhere doing something. When they were at home, in the home, he would be in his room, she would be in hers. They didn't sleep in the same bed. She kicked, he snored. Hadn't touched one another in 20 years. That was and it turns out what had happened was when they had children, raised 2 boys, as far as I know, 2 fine boys. They went to every soccer game, every softball, every baseball. They lived for their children. But their children grew up and moved away. Not only did this couple not know each other, they didn't have a clue how to start. And that's a shame. We had to start them from scratch. Had to get them dating again. It was tough. I remember one of the interventions, I asked them to get in the shower together and for him to wash her hair. It took them 6 weeks to get to do that. We'd meet. I'd say, have y'all taken a shower yet? Nope. And they'd offer me an excuse. Taking a shower yet? Nope. Now, they were showering, okay, just not together and washing each other's hair. And by the way, I said no intercourse. This is not about any of that. This is just something that's very intimate that a couple can do. They finally got it. They came in, they said, we took a shower. I'm glad the room was getting a little close. But anyway, they took a shower. I said, so what happened? He said, well, I started to wash her hair. She got soap in her eyes. She complained, and I fled. That's his exact words. I fled. I said, thank you. What you've done is given me what's called an elicitation window, a snapshot into what your life is like. You get upset, you complain, he flees because he's not going to put up with it, and that was their life. That's not what God created marriage for. Marriage is intimate. Marriage is, and I'm not talking just sex. Marriage is 2 human beings getting closer and closer together through the years and developing an intimacy that I know things with, for, by, and about Diana that you will never know. That's the way it's supposed to be. That's not what they had built. And had I got a chance to meet with that couple 25 years before, pretend, and offer them that invariant prescription, and they actually got to know one another, how much different would the next 20 years have been? That's what that intervention does. It gets the couple being a couple again, and the children being children. Nowadays, when I offer this intervention, I tell the parents, okay, everybody's got cell phones. I know your kids have got cell phones. The rule is, when you leave, you can tell them, text me. Don't bother calling. We'll talk more about establishing rules and stuff. Don't bother calling. I'm not going to answer. But if there are body fluids leaking on the floor, you can text. And then the parent can decide whether they're going to answer or not. And I encourage them not to unless there are body fluids leaking on the floor. Because I want husband and wife to be the most important relationship in the home. I think that's the way it's been designed from the beginning. It doesn't mean, by the way, and I'm not saying that single-parent households don't exist and won't work. It's just a lot more work. And you got to find other support from other places, really, to make it work well. Friday night, rules for discipline. 7 minutes. I think you have this handout. I put here both or all parents should be on the same page. There we go. I'm saying this recognizing that there are families that have blended families. There are families that have single parents. It doesn't matter. If it's a blended family and children spend one weekend here and a week there and then a weekend and then all that, doesn't matter. Both parents should be on the same page. Otherwise, it's going to be much more difficult. If you think, boy, there's no way on God's green earth I can get along with him, that's hopefully what therapy is for. Somebody who can help, a referee if nothing else. But you need to be on the same page. The children need to know that the rules are consistent. Discipline is not to be decided on or acted on when a parent is angry. Very frequently, Monday, boy, you better not do that again. Tuesday, I told you don't do that again. Wednesday, you're getting on my nerves, don't do that again. Thursday, if you do that one more time, and Friday, kapow! You're teaching the kid to hit when they're angry, which is not what we're trying to teach them. If, however, the child knows, if I lie, I get 2 swats. I don't have to lecture about that. You lied? Oh, bummer. Let's go get 2 swats, then we can come back and get this conversation over with. They know what to expect. Discipline should be, I say, consistent times 4. If ever there's a parent who says, don't do what I do, do what I say, they deserve what they get. Okay? That's as childish can be. Consistently model what you expect your children to do. Consistently expect the appropriate behavior. Oh, well, we're in public, so you can misbehave because I don't want to correct you while we're in public. No. And then we'll go back to just simply lying. A lie here is a lie here is a lie there. It's going to be the same regardless. Parents should consistently apply discipline when it's needed. Oh, that puts us back in public. I can't discipline them because we're in public. James Dobson tells a story. He was raising his son. I don't know what he did. It's been a while since I read it, but it required some corporal punishment. And he took his son out into the parking lot, and he was applying corporal punishment. And the kid was doing what kids do. You're killing me. And this lady came up and observed what was going on, and she jumped to the rescue. Stop that. You can't beat on that young man. He wasn't beating on that young man. You don't beat on your kids in public. But anyway, I don't mean that they beat on them in private either. I just mean you don't. The point is not that he was beating his son. And his son stopped screaming and stood up and said, what is she doing? We all have our roles to fill, I guess. But the point is, you should be consistent. If your rule is 2 swats when you lie, you need to do 2 swats when you lie. Because I know children, I've checked. If they get away with it today, tomorrow's it's a done deal. Okay, and last, discipline should be consistent with the offense. I was raised in a very, trying to phrase this carefully, I was raised in a very abusive household. When Oscar got mad, it hurt. And I told Diana when we were dating, we're not going there. Not going to do it. I made the decision when I was 12, if I ever have kids, they're not going to be raised that way. Now, I can't think of an offense where a child would deserve to be beaten, ever. I can think of lots of offenses where 2 swats are appropriate. And so we talked about it, and I never gave more than 2 swats. That was the deal. You said I don't really have a time limit. It's not kept to just an hour, so I can tell a story, right? Okay. Several years ago, I saw a young man. He was 7 years old. He was in kindergarten, And he came to us because he had gone up to his kindergarten teacher on the playground. He was very aggressive, by the way. He was pushing kids on the playground. He was pinching them. He was hurting them. He was drawing pictures of knives with blood dripping off of them. He was very gory, he was torturing his dog. They got him a dog because they wanted to teach him empathy with another creature. And he was torturing the dog so much, they put the dog in the cage when the boy got home from school. I mean, he was over the edge, right? He walked up to his kindergarten teacher on the playground, and he smiled and he said, I used to have a little sister, but I don't anymore because I killed her. And the teacher flipped out. Now, he never had a 7-year-old. He never had a little sister. He had a 12-year-old brother, but she didn't know that. She thought, I've got a budding psychopath, a serial killer on my hands. In fact, the doctor in our office said we need to have him institutionalized because this is all the symptoms of a serial killer. 7 years old. So I went and talked to the mother, because we did, family therapy even then. Went and talked to the mother, and there was no structure in the home, no discipline. The little boy would walk into the living room where Dad was watching television, and he was 7 years old, would say, I don't want to watch that. He'd pick the remote up and he'd change the television station. Dad would get up. Not going to do that in my house. The mother would grab the little boy and run outside with him. You can't hit him, you can't hit him. So he couldn't. The little boy and his brother watched wrestling. Being 7 years old, he didn't know real from fantasy. If you're a wrestling fan, I'm sorry, but it's fantasy. And so when they would wrestle, the little boy would beat up his 12-year-old brother. He had no qualms about hurting somebody else or something else. He would take his puppy that they had bought him and twist the skin on its leg until the puppy yelped. That's pretty serious stuff. So I went and picked the little boy up at school. I brought him to my office. We did things like that back then. And I had an office full of toys. On the rug, there was even a little model of a town. You could get out on the cars and play with the cars. I had boxes and bricks and blocks and balls, all kinds of stuff. And the first time we went to the office, Junior and I sat down on the rug. I said, what do you want to play with? And he said, let's do cars. So we did cars for a few minutes. He got bored. And he said, let's do blocks. I said, okay, but we have to put the cars up first. We put the cars away, got the blocks, played with that for a minute. And I honestly don't remember what he did or said, but he was inappropriate. He started, I don't know what it was. And I said, okay, we're done. Put the toys away. What? And we put the toys away, and I took him back to school. I got to bill about 15 minutes for that session. The next week, I picked Junior up at school. I brought him to my office. I said, what do you want to play with? We played for a few minutes. He said something off the wall, something snarky, something inappropriate, whatever it was. I said, okay, we're done. Put the cars up. Let's go back to school. I never had to explain to Junior what he was doing, by the way. I never lectured him on it. I just said, we're done. And we were. And I took him back to school. It took Junior 3 whole weeks to figure out, I can play with Mr. Charlie for an hour, or I can be stupid and I can go back to class. And he and I never had any more problems. Seriously, we never had any more problems. He continued to misbehave at school, continued to misbehave at home, and after about 4 months, maybe 5 months of doing therapy with a kid, and because basically he and I were done. My goal with Junior was done. Mom called me and she said, okay, enough's enough. Final straw. Now, he'd been doing all this other stuff. I said, well, so what's the final straw? She said he was jumping up and down on the bed. Oh, really? That's the final straw. She said, yep, and he had his pants down around his ankles, and he was spinning in circles, peeing on all 4 walls in the room. That was the final straw. I can see that. Now, interesting, and I don't know this yet, even, one of the symptoms, behaviors is a better word, Junior would be put in bed in his little twin bed every night. His parents would tuck him in, cuddle him up, all the stuff that you do with a 7-year-old. In the morning when they woke up, the bed was dismantled. I mean, literally. He would strip the sheets and the blankets, pile them in a corner, take the bed apart, and in the morning he would be sleeping on the pallet in the corner. I can't explain that one. I said the whole that story once, and someone said, well, yeah, he was treated like a dog, he's going to act like a dog. I don't know. That's really carrying a metaphor a long way. But I brought Mom and Dad, Grandma, who was a caregiver, and Junior all into the same room. I said, okay, so Junior, you've been misbehaving. And I'm not asking, I'm not describing, I'm just stating a fact. You've been misbehaving. Mom, what can you do as a consistent method of discipline? Because, she's been beaten as a child. I didn't say that, but she had been. That's why she would jerk him and grab him out of the room. She didn't want her son to be abused. Okay, I understand that. But there's got to be something that you can do that will discipline your son. And you cannot do it when you're angry. It must be consistent, just like 4 C's like we talked about. She said, well, my grandma used to swat me with a wooden spoon. And she said, you just really can't abuse a child. And we're not getting creative, so don't tell me all the ways you can abuse a child with a wooden spoon. She said, but if you hit him too hard, it breaks the spoon. So I think I can do that. I can swat him with twice, and we set a limit, no more than 2 swats, with a wooden spoon. I like that intervention, not because it's spanking, but because you can do this 5 times in an evening if you have to. I said, now then, what rules would you like that Junior will abide by? I'm going to condense it somewhat, but we settled on 4. You will do as you're told. You will be respectful. You may not hurt your brother. And no talking about killing at school. Those were the 4 rules. Now, I recognize, and I'm going to acknowledge, I don't want a child to do everything that every adult says, but that's a lesson for another time. Right now, we're trying to get Junior's out-of-control behavior under control. Do as you're told, be respectful. Don't talk about killing at school, and don't beat up your brother. So we wrote them down. We went over them with Junior. Can you say them? Yes. And he said them back to me right there at the table. Okay, you got it. Now, Mom, I want you to take this, put it on the refrigerator door, and when Junior wakes up in the morning, he needs to recite these to you. All 4. Before he goes to school, I want him to recite them to you again. When he gets home from school, I want him to recite them to you again. And before he goes to bed, he needs to recite them one more time. Be respectful, do as you're told, don't hit your brother, and don't talk about killing at school. And so I saw her the next week, and she said, well, he didn't believe me at first. First day, I had to swat him 3 times. The second day, I only had to swat him once. The third day, not at all. The 4th day, I had to swat him again. This is expected. And she said, and then the interesting thing is, I had to go to the hospital Friday, stay all day with a friend who was sick, and I had to take Junior because I couldn't find a babysitter. So I explained to him, look, I've got a bag that has cars and coloring books and colors. I will take you out of the room once an hour to go to the bathroom or get a snack, and you can play with these things. And she said, Charlie, he didn't act up all day long. Oh, you can play with these things. And I've got my wooden spoon. She said he didn't act up all day long. He was respectful. He did as he was told. The other 2 were irrelevant at that point. I asked her not. On purpose, I said, I don't want you to tell him what respectful is or is not. Wow, that sounds kind of unfair, doesn't it? Because, see, children learn very, very quickly what's respectable and what's not. They'll push and find the limits, and they'll figure out what you don't put up with, and they'll stop doing that. Children aren't stupid. I have much, much more difficulty explaining these things to adults than I do to children. They get it. Oh, Mom's going to swat my behind twice if I'm disrespectful. And I'll tell you another story tomorrow that didn't even require the swats. Children are very, very smart. And we need to be consistent in telling them, as we raise them, give them messages that I believe in you, I love you, I think you can succeed, and when you grow up, I want you to be able to say, I think for myself, I like myself, and there's no problem so big it can't be solved. That's a challenge, brothers and sisters. It is. Because you got to stay a step ahead of a 7-year-old. Did that sound facetious? Yeah. Pardon? Well, or 10 or 15. Yeah. So anyway, there are some, no, we won't. We'll stop here. Telling, teaching, 4 C's, playground study, you mentioned, okay. Oh, just so you'll know, I'm not all about beating on children, okay? I say that way on purpose. It's not all about spanking. I'm just going to throw out 2 or 3 other options. I know Barry said I didn't say that. But I want to throw out 2 or 3 other options as well. I usually say, Mom, Dad, what can you do that is short-term, high intensity that the child will not like? Spanking is usually short-term and high intensity, and the child does not like it. So that's an option. But another one is, well, I ground my kids. One lady said, my son is grounded until he's 37 years old. Obviously, grounding didn't work. You know? I had another mother who said, I grounded my son from the electronics in his room. The only television he can watch is in the living room with the family. That's not grounded. You know, grounded is, oh, bummer, I'm sorry. You've lost access to every electronic device you own for 24 hours. See, kids don't think in the future. Kids think you're lucky if you get 15 minutes each side of now. But kids think in the present. Short-term, high-intensity consequences. Junior, you've misbehaved. Sit in the corner until you get control of yourself. Whose job is it now to decide when he stops yelling and screaming? Sit in the corner, because that's what I wanted to learn anyway. I don't want my son to grow up thinking I've got to control him. I don't want control of him. I want him to grow up and get out of my house. By the way, speaking of getting out of the house, have you heard of the empty nest syndrome? It's wonderful. Yeah. I mourned my children leaving my house. I think 15, 20 seconds. And so it's a good thing. The design, the goal is grow up, go do your thing. Angie was 12. I believe, by the way, in preparing for the future. Angie was 12, and I said, darling, one of these days, you're going to grow up. You're going to move out, get your own place. You might get married if that's what you choose to do. She started crying. I said, what are you crying for? She said, I'm not ready to move out. I said, well, it's good, because I'm not ready for you to move out either. But when you turn 18, both of us will be. Okay, it's 10 minutes after 8. I've kept you more than I should have. Thank you for your attention. Pardon me. We'll do this again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. 10. Okay, so it'll be breakfast at 9, and we'll start at 10. We'll go till 12. We'll take a break for lunch. We'll have lunch here, 1 to 3, and then Sunday during the services, I've got the class up here and the sermon as well. Okay, well, since you didn't throw anything and shoot me tonight, we'll do this again tomorrow. You want the floor?
Well, enjoyed that. When I met Charlie, I'm not going to tell you a story, but it was kind of funny. But there was a rifle involved, yeah. and a skunk. I'll tell you a story sometime. But appreciate Charlie being here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll be with us tomorrow. I had, seriously though, when Charlie and I first met, we did hit it off pretty good. And Charlie very patiently mentored me through the years to do some counseling and stuff. And well, actually more than that, a lot of counseling by personal experience and relating stories and giving me books to read. And I just really appreciate him and what he did. And it helps me a lot in what, in my function is what I do now. Is it okay if I share? I can tell a story. I don't want to take your thunder away. It was because of these kind of things that Charlie made me aware of. I had an opportunity to counsel with a lady and a husband who were heading for a divorce. I think they came to talk to me just because they wanted to have a check mark in their mind and tell everybody, hey, we got counseling and it didn't work. So their son was just turning 18 and he's leaving home, and now they're ready to have a divorce. So one of the things that Charlie taught me was, and he talked about it tonight, was what's important in your life. Is the order correct? So I handed him an index card and I said, write down the most important people in your life in order of their importance. And it's one of these things, unless you sit there, you can hear about it and chuckle and go, I can't believe that. But until you sit there and have them pass you the cards back, here's what her card said. My son's number one. Now these people again didn't go to church or really involved at a church, so I'm not gonna pass any kind of judgment that they didn't put God first. They just aren't there. They just haven't been to that place. So the son was first, the parents were second, The husband was third, and the dog was fourth. That was her order of people in her life as to their importance. I go, okay, it's bad, but not as bad. His list, however, was their son was first, the parents were second, and I'm as truthful as truth ever stood for. The dog was third, and his wife was fourth. They're wondering why their marriage was on the rocks. First, the most important thing in both their lives was leaving home. That started the crisis. But rebuilding from that order of importance of people in their lives was something they were not willing to do. They didn't want to reorder that, and they did get divorced. But just to drive home what Charlie said, getting it right makes all the difference. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for joining us if you're out there online, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good evening.